The Final Fantasy series is a very unique beast within the world of video games because when you consider it, these games just take so many different forms, different genres, different versions of the same might and magic, different characters, heroes, and villains, but also every single Final Fantasy game has also received so many different versions of it, different remakes, re-releases, ports, and sometimes complete catastrophes. But what we're getting today is something that feels very, very special. And that's why I wanted to talk about it so in depth. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and this is my review of the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster. Now, my point of view on this is going to be very unique because I seriously love Final Fantasy VI, and I always have. A lot of people consider it to be the greatest role-playing game that's ever been created. In a lot of ways, it is. But some of the previous versions of this game have kind of sucked. Like, if you played on PlayStation, it has terrible load times. If you played it on Game Boy, they tried to put in extra dungeons that kind of sucked. If you played the original version on Super Nintendo, it had some very bad translation errors. Well, it seems like what Square Enix's goal with the Pixel Remaster is to finally make a truly perfect version of this almost perfect game. Now, what is it about this that makes it so unique? Honestly, they've done hundreds of tiny changes that make this very much a more refined version of this old school 16-bit adventure. But real quick, in case you've never played Final Fantasy VI and you don't know what it's about, this is a very, very, very fun game. In a lot of ways, it was incredibly ahead of its time. This is a game that was originally released on the Super Nintendo, but it has side quests, it's got optional objectives, it's got hidden characters, it's got so much different stuff packed into it that encourages you to play it again and again. But what is it about? Well, it's about a character named Terra. She's a person who has this incredible magic built inside her. But suddenly, when she wakes up, she's stuck in the middle of this war. There's an invading empire. There's an evil clown named Kefka. There's a lot of chaos that's sort of being wrought. But at the center of this is a lot of very good art. My personal favorite thing about Final Fantasy VI has always been the little attention to detail. This world seems so gloriously alive with its little tiny pixelated versions of steampunk technology, the times when you're casting fire in combat and trying to burn people to smithereens. There is so much in this that looked good in previous versions, but in the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, it's utterly glorious. This is easily the greatest version of this game. Like, so many tiny touches to the new character models, to the times where they're trying to update the facial animations during the most dramatic scenes. This is objectively the best version of the game. But there's also some stuff in this that's been completely redone from top to bottom, most specifically the music. Now, for every single Final Fantasy game, the soundtrack is incredibly important. If you're trying to tell a huge epic journey that goes from continents to, huge battles in the sea and stuff like that, it helps to have some really good poppin' tunes to back it up. Now, this is a completely remixed soundtrack. They've redone it, they've re-recorded it, they've brought in a lot of new heart to these old school songs. Now, this was partially done with the original composer, Nobuo Uematsu, and it really has that rare energy inside of it that absolutely works. If for no other reason, if there's like a particular excuse you need to buy this game, if you've played it in the past, the new music is just so freaking deep. It hits so many notes. But this does bring me to the most controversial change, which I'm going to talk about in depth. This isn't a spoiler, I am going to be a little bit vague, but there is a very crucial and pivotal moment in the game itself that's called the opera scene. Now in this, it's always been something that's tried to push the boundaries of technology. Even when you played this back on the Super Nintendo, the entire point of it was basically the developers trying to flex. They were trying to show off their skill by having something that was just so far beyond the capabilities of any other storytelling that existed in the 90s. Well, this new version basically makes it a 2D HD rendition. The cameras move, there's a lot of different choices that are made to make it a much more cinematography-based 16-bit style thing, but they also put in some very strange vocals. Yes, that's right, this scene is now fully voiced. They sing, they dance, they move around the stage, and the audio is a bit strange. Now, this sort of makes sense. The character is supposed to be not the best opera singer, but it sounds very strangely bad. I'm not going to say this like damages the experience or anything, but it feels like a very, very centered choice that does not work. Now, this is exceptionally weird because the rest of the soundtrack sounds good, and also these developers over at Square Enix have already made good versions of this opera house scene, so it almost feels like they're purposely trying to make this sound kind of funky. But let's go back to the positives, which is definitely my part of this that definitely kind of impressed me the most is we finally have a perfect translation of this game. There has been some debates because this is a title that has a lot of different intrigue. It has a lot of different motivations inside it. There's politics, there's kingdoms, there's armies that are being crumbled and poisoned. Like, there's a lot of different threads that come together to such a really well done degree. Anybody who's ever played Final Fantasy VI could objectively tell you the writing is incredibly top notch. And finally, they've basically fixed all the tiny plot holes that existed, certainly just because of the way people tried to convey certain lines. Everything is so streamlined, it's so nice, but it does bring me to the other downside, which is this utterly awful font. I have no idea who at Square Enix decided to make this the specific font, but dang does it not work. Now, what's extra aggravating is that in the course of leading up to this release, I've been playing through all of the other Final Fantasy Pixel remasters because this is a whole saga of remakes. They all have this incredibly bad font. Now, these are going to be on Steam and they're also going to be obviously on cell phones. What is the point of this? Like, the fact that the mod team, like, fans are going to have to fix these terrible letterings. And especially it sucks when you're trying to do really epic scenes where you're dunking on people, suplexing trains. Like, there's so much glorious ridiculousness in Final Fantasy VI that works. And then you see this, which definitely doesn't. Now, there's a bunch of rumors going around that even I've heard that this is going to eventually come to consoles as a big Pixel Remaster collection. You have to fix these letters before that. Like, this absolutely will not stand. This game looks good. This game plays good. A lot of the new features, like the auto battle, it's cool that you could just set your team up to fight and grind and level up pretty much autopilot. But whenever I see these numbers, whenever I see this lettering, I just think, is this a giant prank? The Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster is exactly what we wanted. It's everything that makes this game big and glorious and great. But sometimes it's the tiny errors that annoy us the most. This feels like one of those really cool remakes that's for both the existing fans and also newcomers. Like, a lot of the tiny extra stuff they've added into it so that the times where you're looking off in the distance from the top of a mountain, there's more little like tiny details that let you understand what they're trying to do. This is the best that this world has ever existed. And I know that a lot of the fan base right now is hoping that we get a full real remake and not just a Pixel Remaster, but personally, I'm kind of satisfied by this. I think that a full remake someday would be nice, but if this is all we get is the Pixel Remasters, personally, I'm really dang happy with it. But seriously, Square Enix, release these on consoles. Put this on Xbox. Put this on PlayStation. Put this on the Switch. I want trophies and achievements. I like being forced to do every single side quest, get every single ultimate weapon, and see every hidden cutscene. Give me that juicy extra motivation. Okay, so we've heard a lot of good and a little bit of bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster a 9.5 out of 10. I want to say a giant thank you for watching this video and giving it a like. It seriously means a lot. Final Fantasy is my favorite series of all time, and in preparation of this, I actually beat every version of Final Fantasy VI to make sure I could be the complete obsessive expert for this specific video. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you could, give this video a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already, but do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. And yes, I really do own every single version of Final Fantasy. I don't know why, but I do. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.